Welcome everybody to this second lesson on my YouTube channel. Today I'm wanting to show you guys something that really was fun for me to paint, and this is cloaks. So in this case we're gonna paint some white cloaks. And yeah, before I start I always want to do some explanation on the thing we are going to do today. So let's start with a miniature that I painted probably 15 years ago, or maybe even more. I was probably 15 years old or 16 years old when I painted this miniature. And the cloak was the thing that I was really happy about. I painted like a couple of cloaks back then. I was not always happy about it, but I really loved the shading on this miniature. So actually when I look at it now I think, oh my god, it's not that good. And when I studied more how you needed to paint cloak, I noticed that a lot of people make like these highlights on the cloak. And I'm gonna show also a very old miniature of mine, where also I did some highlighting. You see, now there is like some yellow on the highest parts, or at least I tried to put it on the highest parts. I did not know really where to put it back then. But then again, I was really happy with this model. Also the other highlights on the, like the yellow armor, I was really happy in the eyes with this model. And like I think 4 years ago when I started like my Instagram profile and I really wanted to become better at painting miniatures, I painted this epic model. It's a really epic model. And then again, you see it's almost the same technique with the cloak. Like we did some shading, like some darker parts, and I did some highlighting with yellow or orangey colors. And the thing is that that's actually what we're gonna do today. And the problem with this miniature is it doesn't have a lot of contrast. So like the darkest parts are not really that dark, and the lighter parts are not even that good highlighted. So let me show you a miniature that I painted this Christmas, actually, last Christmas. Last Christmas I painted this goblin. That was my singing for today. So, and then I'm going to show you the back side of the cloak because that's really where the good part is. And then you can see I was really happy with the lightning. So there's a lot of dark areas in the recesses, and there's yeah, some really good highlights on the edges. And that's what makes a cloak look good. And it needs to look realistic. So the biggest thing you need to remember is the deepest parts need to be the darkest. Very logic, but you need to paint it. So you see here like this edges and the recesses, they are almost black. And then the sharpest point is almost yellow. Okay, today we're gonna do a white cloak. And to start off, you need to make some really good basic coats, and I really like this color, this Mechanical Standard Grey. I use this paint a lot. I really like this. It's one of my favorite base colors. And then I just painted a lot of layers with wet paint of Administratum Grey. And when we go to the palette, there's also you can see the colors that I used are White Scar, Pallid Flash, Administratum Grey, Dawnstone, Eshin Grey, and finally Abaddon Black. And we also gonna, so the first thing I'm gonna show you guys is I'm making a little tutorial on this cloak here, so it needs to focus. And this is one layer of the standard gray, and then like I think 5 layers of Administratum Grey, but like watered down. So make sure your paint is wet. I always use a wet palette when I paint. Really important you learn how to do this. There are a lot of tutorials on this on YouTube. Probably gonna make one myself. And actually, what I also really like is this new paint, this contrast paint from Citadel, and it's Apothecary White. Well, this is not white. This is a grey. So this should called Apothecary Grey, but I understand why they call it this, because it's the color they use to highlight or shade white. But we're gonna use it on our grey, and I'm gonna show you how good this works. This is really, you can like almost instantly see the effect of this color. And that's the fun part. You can just stroke it on and immediately you get the effect. So make sure you don't get too much at the bottom of your cloak. You can see now there's a like small pile of, or like small drops, and you can just strike them away, put them somewhere else. And you already see like this already looks pretty good. I mean, you still see the light flickering because it's wet, but you can understand if this dries, it's already looking pretty good. So, also gonna paint the back a little bit. This cloak has a really poor design on the back side. It's actually like used as a cape of Skaven, but I use them to use them on a Space Marine between their legs. So, and because normally now you have to wait for at least 30 minutes for this to dry properly, I already done this on a model, and this is my chaplain. So this is yeah, you can see I put actually the same thing. So just Administratum Grey, and then I put down the Apothecary White. Really cool effect. And the first thing you need to do now is yeah, I'm gonna freeze the video here because my sound dropped in the live show. I did this on Twitch, and the problem with my headset is if it doesn't put sound out of the system, it doesn't work. So I'm gonna do a little voiceover, and in like 5 minutes I find out the sound is gone, and then we keep on going with the original sound. So this is Lenny from the future talking to you guys. So what I'm first gonna do is start the movie again and explain what I'm doing. So the first thing I'm explaining here is that you need to paint the same color gray as the shade, and in this case it's the like the mid gray color, and the Dawnstone is called, and you can see that I'm explaining why you need to do this. So what you see is that there are darker parts that I'm pointing out now, and that are probably too dark for the light, and there are some areas that are really good. So on the chest it looks already pretty realistic, but there are also parts like on the, yeah, the camera needs to sharpen out, it's too dark on the right knee. So first what I'm doing is painting with like the mid gray that is almost the same color as the shade, and trying to make more balance in the colors. So you see there's a small part there that doesn't have shade on it because the contrast paint didn't go stick there well, so fix that part. And then also there at the bottom there's missing some paint, or some shade actually. Also there and there. So I'm kind of fixing the original shade that the contrast paint has made. And now I'm talking about what kind of brush I used. So this is the Artis Optimus M series #1, and I like it because there's a lot of hairs, and you can really fill it up with nice paint, so it really works well with shading like this. And the next step is going to be like we're going to make the darker parts even darker. So make sure those are really realistic. So at the bottom there and in between the edges or the recesses of the cloak, especially in the center, because there should be like the opening, and also under the cord or the belt there should be, or the rope, there should be a lot of shade. Using these dark colors to really make the illusion that there's no light there, because this is actually what you need to do, right? If you paint the cloak, make sure it looks realistic. There needs to be contrast between the darker shades and the lighter shades, so it looks, yeah, it looks realistic. That's the whole point of painting cloaks. And that's what a shade cannot do. Like the shade will give you a really good base of where you need to paint the shades, but you should try to make a color difference to make it look more realistic. And the deepest part are the darkest, and the smaller edges, recesses, should be the lightest. So now I'm mixing some black. To make sure it's going to be even darker. It's like a 50-50 mix. And again, start with deepest edges. Make sure they're nice and dark. And also again, under the belt. Making sure the effect is going on there. You see, I don't even apply that a lot of paint. It's just some really parts that are good. That I'm talking again about how good the chest already is, because there is like the contrast paint really did its work there. So now I explained that those parts are too dark, and we should try to make them even more light. So then I go back to the base coat, the Administratum Grey, and it's really watered down. So it still keeps on a shade, but it makes it just lighter. This is called glazing. Glazing down the darker shades. Now you see it starts to look more realistic. Also there in the deepest edges. And there as well. Those are all parts that had too many inked on them or contrast paint that needed to be fixed. Oh, now I found out. So this is the point where I found out I messed up the sound, and this is the moment where I'm gonna mute the mic and let you guys watch the rest of the video. Oh my god, the headset is going down because there's no sound. I need to put some music on the background. So Chris, where did the music, where did my voice stop? What was the last thing I said? because the headset is going down because it needs to registrate sound, or else it goes down after a couple of minutes. That's what went wrong. So what was the last thing you heard? So I was telling that oh, so you missed the whole darker, lighter part. Okay, so let's start over again. So the parts here, I used darker gray, and the yeah, to make sure it becomes yeah, more realistic, like I told in the start, and then also here in the yeah, like the under the belt, under the cord, it needs to be darker. And then here there are spots that are more like too dark, too grayish. And again, yeah, you need to make sure that you put some light gray on it, so it works better, becomes more nice. The yeah, and this is where we were. So first I made some Dawnstone Grey, filling up the more normal parts. Then I went to Eshin Grey to make it even more dark. Then I mixed a 50-50 of Eshin Grey and Dawnstone Grey to fill in the lighter parts. And that's where, and then we use the Administratum Grey to make it more light. And there's where we picked off. Yeah, it's really shitty, man. This headset. I really need to work with a microphone. I'm gonna fix that one next, probably this week. Like, there's a guy I know who has one for his stream, and I can borrow that one. Because this headset, it's like actually like only for yeah, it needs to registrate sound coming out of it, and if it doesn't, it goes out after a few minutes. So that's really stupid. I just realized it now. That's also what happened last time. But then I did like the whole stream. So you see there are like this darker parts here that are too dark, and then you just put in some lighter gray. And because it's so wet, it actually, the darker color beneath it still makes it look darker, and that is how you really get the nice gradients from like dark gray to light gray. And like now on the chest, there's like too much darkness for me, so I'm actually just gonna light it down and keep in the darker parts. So what I did now is I actually put on some music for myself, and you guys don't hear it, and then it should be good all the time. So now you see, like, it's already so much better than we started. You see, like the deepest edges or recesses are now really dark. The smaller recesses are not that dark anymore, and that makes it look more realistic. And that's what you should do with the shade, because the shade is just, it's darker if there is more shade, and it's lighter when there's lesser shade, but it doesn't. And so normally the deepest recesses get the most inked, will look darker. That's why it works so well, but doesn't always apply very well. So I think, again, this is still too dark. And we're just gonna paint some lightness over it. And this will be fine. So the final step is to highlight the cloak. And this is actually the the fun part for me. This is what I really like. So first I make a 50-50 mix of Eshin Grey and Pallid with flesh. So something happened with the, tried to move the, you guys could see what I'm mixing, but I actually moved it out of the camera. Yeah, there it is. I'm gonna tell you guys, streaming is like the hardest thing ever. I mean, streaming games is really easy. You just log in, play your game, people gonna watch it. But painting and streaming is really like the most difficult thing ever. You really need to respect everybody that's doing that. But I will be good at it. It just takes practice. So now we have this mix, and then we're gonna just make a rough highlight. And highlighting Cloak is really easy because you see where you need to go. There's nothing. It's not like some marine armor that is more difficult. This is really easy. So like all the higher parts need to be highlighted, and you make a gradient that goes from light to dark. And now this is the last phase I'm going to use for this brush, because this can be really going to in some detail already. So I only do the biggest surface, and then so this is what I call a rough highlight. We just finding out, okay, these are the biggest parts that need to be light. So there should be like not that much shade here. So I'm really gonna make it much lighter. Okay, that's about done. And then I'm gonna go to a fine brush, because this brush is actually really big, as you can see. It's pretty, doesn't really have a nice tip. You see, it's pretty fat tip. So now I actually go to the same mix, but I'm gonna make some more better lines. So let's show me if I can get this more up close, like this. Yeah, need to turn it a little bit for myself, and then you're really gonna make highlights like this. Still call this rough highlighting, because you really want to make a highlight of the whole edge or the whole surface, because it is a white cloak, you know, there should be a lot of light colors. I'm never a fan of really using like pure white, but with a white cloak it's actually legit to use wet light paint. Oh yeah, now it really becomes to starting to look good. And this is actually what is really important for miniature painting. Like the previous phases were like really rough and actually pretty easy. And if you want to learn how to become a better painter, you should really try to learn these easy first steps, and then Of course, the highlighting is gonna be difficult. You need to do a lot of practice to make, yeah, nice lines. But it will still look pretty okay, even if you're bad at highlighting, because you did the steps before. And actually, everybody should be able to paint a miniature with the right base colors and put some contrast paint on it, right? That's why I think contrast paint is really, really nice, really good for people who just start miniature painting, and they can really get their models tabletop ready very fast. And after that, you're gonna learn step by step how to get better, just like Chris, who's already getting really much better. So sounds still good? Yep. So now we go to the finer highlight, and we start with the pure Pallid Witch Flesh, and we're gonna give this a highlight on all the upper edges. All right. Yeah, really starting to like it already. So, and now we go to the final highlight, which will be a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh and a lot of white scar, but with a lot of water. So it's really important that it's not too rough. So it needs to dry on the. So actually, it looks like there's a lot of color difference, but we will see after a few minutes. It will dry, and then you will see it will be a really nice highlight. That's really the trick with if you paint pure white, pure black. Make sure it's wet, so it will dry on the miniature. Really good painting is done with wet paint that dries on the mini, and then it will look really realistic because you don't see the edges of the paint. So if you watch your first miniatures, what makes them look bad is that you can see there's paint on it. You see like the little parts of paint. It's actually the same as painting a wall. If the paint's too dry, it looks shit. But when you make sure your paint's a little bit wet and you stroke it all over the wall, like same thickness, and it dries, it all looks the same. That's why it looks good. Same as with miniatures. You need to make sure the paint looks like one whole thing, not like a layer on layer on layer. But it is the technique. The technique is wet layers. So, already seeing to just to dry actually. Just do some highlighting. So this needs to dry now, and what I do most of the time, I just let it dry for like an hour, and then I will check, like, is there some spots too light, are there some spots too dark, and I will just fix it. Then we go to the back, and I already done the back, like last week actually, in the stream that also went wrong, where the sound dropped. And there you can see already what I did. You see, this is already dried. You can really see the effect of the higher lighter parts and the darker parts. Maybe we can show you the, yeah, this is also pretty dry already. You can see the shade effect. You should always check this after a half an hour. You can see, like, here the puddles of contrast paint are there, and you can just strike them up. So I'm gonna make a tutorial on this one, and then I'm probably gonna edit this YouTube video, or maybe not post it. So I hope you learned something today. I'm gonna stop the stream. So thank you guys for watching. See you in the next one.